This episode of the QA is sponsored by Lucky Shot. Happy end of the month to you. My name is Dave Tim for the QA from Guns and Tactics. It is the end of the month. That means it is time for the QA, and usually we do this on the last Monday of the month. I realize it is the very last day of the month, so we're getting this in just by the nick of time. But those of you that have been following the channel know that the end of July is super hectic for us because of TriggrCon, and I just got back from TriggrCon 2 days ago, and I have been just an editing machine trying to get as many videos out as I can right after the show. I wanted to try to get as many out during the show, right after the show, leading up. No, not leading up, but right after the show. Anyways, you get the idea. But we had a great time. And before I get into the questions that we got sent in for the show, do have to give a quick shout out to Lucky Shot for sponsoring this episode. So thank you very much to Lucky Shot. We'll give a little bit more information about them here in a little bit. That's a delicious pineapple soda. Those of you guys that saw me at TriggrCon know that I was maybe shipping back some soda that you can't get around here. Anyways, another topic. Before I get into the questions, TriggrCon. You got a lot of people asking me, how was TriggrCon? Favorite things, favorite, items, products, firearms, accessories. And let me just tell you this. If you are in the Pacific Northwest, TriggrCon is by far a show worth visiting. It's a great experience. The people, number one, are my favorite part. I get to go and hang out with my friends, meet new friends, meet industry people, and it's just so much more of an intimate, small gathering that it just allows you to actually, get some good FaceTime with people, get to know their companies, get to know their products, but also kind of make an impression as well. So that's what number one for me is TriggrCon's all about. It's all about the people. I will go to TriggrCon as long as I can just because of the people that make it so great. That being said, it's also a gorgeous area. I had a little bit of time off in between traveling and the show, and I got to do some sightseeing, which I'll have another video kind of coming out on my travels and behind the scenes, which I've never done before. It's kind of like a travel vlog, but I'll have that out early part of August. So look for that on the channel. But Seattle, Pacific Northwest area, just absolutely what a gorgeous area. I can't wait to go back on a vacation and actually spend some more time. So that's my little personal plug of TriggrCon. As far as my favorite things, it was kind of cool. There was little things, and we did videos on a lot of this stuff, so make sure you check out the TriggrCon playlist. I'll put a card up here if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on other platforms, make sure you head on over to the webpage so you can check out all of our TriggrCon 2019 coverage. But little products like the Kinetic Energy Tools brass deflector, I thought was just a simple, little ingenious, little brass deflector for training, things like that. Firearms, obviously B&T had some really cool subguns. The LWRC, the Barrett 308, the Masada handgun was really cool. The Silencer Co Maxim non-NFA looked really, really cool. And you just get to also put your hands on some of your old favorites as well. So for me, getting some hands on some precision rifles built by H&H Precision was always great. But yeah, a lot of cool firearms in that realm. And as far as products, I got to see a couple things that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but as soon as I can, I promise I will. And I hate to be that industry tease that everybody does not like, but I saw one thing in particular that was really awesome. Those of you that know what type of scopes I'm into know that it's just really awesome. I can't wait to tell you more about it. But I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so as soon as I can put out the footage and photos and kind of publish a little bit more information, I certainly will. But that was, again, that's part of the cool thing with TriggrCon, is you get to go there and meet people and kind of get some information and some background and take advantage of those opportunities. So I'm pretty excited about that. As far as other things that I saw at TriggrCon that I thought were really cool, the tactical AR virtual reality I thought showed a lot of potential, and if I could get a virtual reality setup in my basement, I totally would. Maybe someday. And just otherwise, there was just cool stuff. Just really cool overall stuff to see. Nice triggers, nice parts that I, again, encourage you to check out the playlist. So that being said, let's get into your questions. And actually, before I answer your questions, I should say the best way to get your question on the show is to send us an email. Shoot us an email at the address shown below. It is theqa@gunsandtactics.com. That comes into our inbox. If it's something we've covered on the show before, I'll probably reply with that answer. However, you can also leave a comment. Use the hashtag theQA so we can hopefully find it. You can leave a comment on our social media outlets. But we definitely want to have you guys send in your questions. So the first one is a comment, kind of a follow-up from Paul. Just got done watching the June, and a question was about Loctite on the barrel extension. He purchased an Aero Precision upper and a Roscoe barrel, but it wouldn't go in. So basically, he used the freezer technique or whatever. So what that technique is called thermal fitting. And there's been a few companies that have been doing it. Bravo Company, for example, they purposely undersize the mouth of their upper receiver. JP does it. There's a few others as well. But basically what you do is you'll take a little bit of heat from a heat gun or a torch, and you're not putting it directly on. You're just trying to lightly and slowly heat the mouth of the receiver so the mouth swells a little bit to accept the barrel extension, and then once it cools, it'll have that nice tight bond. And in my opinion, that is a great way to fit the barrel to the upper receiver. Now, if you have a sloppy fit, that's where we talked about using some sort of Loctite or other adhesive to kind of bond those two. In essence, you're kind of bedding the barrel into the upper receiver. However, with these undersized upper receivers, or if you happen to get a tight one, you can thermal fit. So again, I use a small torch, and again, I'm just using it real slow. Maybe I'll do a video on it in the future. I'll probably save that for the fall when I'm going to be inside more, but I'll do a video on thermal fitting your upper receiver barrel. I'll use a Bravo receiver or something for that. So Paul, good deal. I'm glad it worked out for you. All right, question number 1 is from Mike. I'm looking to set up a battle belt using Comtac and Blackhawk Kydex. Will these attach, and how would you set it up for range use and matches? So real quick, I did a video on battle belt setup. I'll put a card up here on YouTube. If you're watching on other platforms, please check out the webpage, gunsanddex.com, search for battle belt. But here's the thing, it depends on the type of belt you'll get. If you wanted to get like a Kydex belt, a Molly belt, one that has Molly wrapped around it, like the padded battle belts, etc., that's certainly fine. They're comfortable, but what I found, they move around and they shift a little bit more for my taste than I like. But then you would just get any Molly compatible pouches, and then you'd get a Molly compatible holster mount. What I've kind of gravitated towards is more of the duty belt style, around that 2-inch, 2.25 thickness for the belt. Again, that's what's kind of gone over in that video. And then I use tech locks. You can use other accessory mounting options, but basically then you would clip it or attach it right to the belt. So make sure that the pouch you're getting, if it has a belt loop, make sure it's obviously wide enough for the belt. Or if you use tech lock or the Safariland quick detach system, you could then attach that and go from there. Now, as far as what you'd want for competition, the reason why I still like tech lock, or a lot of competitors are using the Safariland quick detach system, is so you can configure stuff for the different stage. If you're going to a class, a handgun class, obviously you don't need to have your AR mags, your shotgun caddies, dump pouch. You can just have your holster and handgun mags. If I was shooting a rifle only stage, I can quickly take off the holster using the Safariland quick detach products, and then I could just have my rifle mags. If I was shooting an all 3 stage, I could have my shotgun caddies up front, my handgun, my rifle mags. But you can kind of configure it so you're not carrying around extra weight. Or sometimes, and granted, I like the idea of having things in their spot so you always know where to go, but there are times on these really big stages where you need a ton of shotgun shells, and where my rifle and handgun mags usually would be, I have to put shotgun caddies because I need all of those for a really long jungle run, for example. So check out that video. Hope that answers that question, but that's how I would set it up for range and matches. Generally, holsters on the strong side. I like my handgun mags forward of my opposite hip, rifle mags on my opposite hip, slightly back. Shotgun caddies generally be up front. On the back for training, I have a med pouch behind my pistol, and then I have a dump pouch on my left, basically above my left butt cheek. Number 2 is from Reese. Thank you for reviewing the Ridgeback. Are you aware of any 2-way or 3-way butt plate plug-and-play options that can be used with the Ridgeback? So first things first, I would reach out to Grayboe and just check to see if they have an option. I don't know offhand because I don't have a Macmillan plate to compare it to, but I'd be willing to bet that the spacing for the 2 bolts for the recoil pad is probably pretty similar. So it might just plug and play, but I would call Grayboe and just ask them what their options are. But the reality is, it's not that hard of a job, even with just simple hand tools. And basically what you're gonna do is, if you wanted to use that Macmillan one that you linked to, or the Masterclass one, is basically, it's going to come with either wood screws or machine screws. And if I was attaching it to my stock, then what I would do is locate the holes, drill into the stock, and then you would get a threaded pillar or a threaded receptacle, which is basically like a shaft that's drilled and tapped for that thread size. And then you know, I would machine in or use the lathe and cut some grooves in it, glue those in the stock, and then you'd screw it right in there. So it's actually a pretty simple gunsmithing job to add, just making sure it fits the profile. But I would certainly reach out to Graybo and see, and I'm willing to bet that the McMillan one is probably going to be pretty close to plug and play, if not plug and play. Question number 3 is from Aaron. I have this problem when I push in hard a loaded magazine in my AR with the bolt locked back to the rear. The bolt would just randomly get sent forward. I have about 600 rounds since I've cleaned it. It's a fully built lower from BCM Uppers, fully built DD. So he's using quality components. Brought a prop for this one. Firearms unloaded. We'll lock the bolt to the rear. So here's the thing. You can see there's nothing in here. The bolt catch, it's spring loaded, but it's generally, there we go. It's spring loaded. There's a little spring in there, but that spring is designed to return it down so it's not catching. And it's only when an empty mag follower comes up that it pushes the bolt catch up to lock your bolt to the rear. So why does that matter? Well, what happens is if you insert your mag really hard, okay, or we slam it, let's do this, it's going to cause that bolt to move back slightly, taking the pressure off of the bolt catch. That spring is then going to kick that bolt catch down to where it's supposed to go, and then it's going to cause the carrier to go forward. So again, the only thing that is holding that bolt catch now in the catch position is that forward spring pressure from the bolt being pushed forward against it, if that makes sense. So if we were to slam something really hard, bolt goes forward. So my suggestion to you is you don't need to slam magazines in. So when you are doing an emergency reload, pew, 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 bolt locks back to the rear, gun's empty, eject your mag, grab a new one, just a firm insert and just give it a little bit of a push-pull. So when I teach, insert and tug. I insert, make sure it is secure in there, so I give it just a little bit of tug, and then you can either come up with your thumb and hit the bolt catch, bolt release. You can use the charging handle, whatever technique is your preference, but that's all you need to do. You don't need to He-Man slam that mag in, because you could risk over insertion issues. You could have stoppages there. I've seen some students where they hit the bottom of the mag so hard they actually cause a round to pop up out of the feed lip, so then you have a double feed that was user induced. So if you hit it hard, that'll happen. All right, before we get into the next question, let's give a shout out to Lucky Shot. Lucky Shot is nice enough to sponsor this episode, and they're giving away a nice pint glass with a real 50 cal bullet into it to one viewer. So we'll select a random viewer here in just a moment, but I really do like their glassware. It's nice, it's classy, it gives you a nice little handle to hang onto with the round, and it's a cool conversation piece. So Lucky Shot, thank you very much for sponsoring this episode. I do appreciate you providing the prize and supporting the channel and supporting this episode. Without sponsors like Lucky Shot, we couldn't continue to do these episodes, so I really do appreciate it. If you're in the mood for a nice beverage and you're feeling lucky and want to take a shot at some nice glassware, check out Lucky Shot. Too much? I don't know. It's a delicious pineapple soda. It's so good. I love pineapple soda. I love it. Question number 4, Steven, AR-15 or shotgun for home defense? Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Thanks, love the show. Thank you. Honestly, it really depends. There's a lot of things to take into account. If you're asking me to narrow it down just between the two, I would choose an AR-15. Reason why: number 1, ballistics, over penetration. If you're worried about going through different layers of sheetrock, stuff like that, depending on which shotgun ammo you're using, generally your AR probably is going to be better off, especially if you're comparing it versus a slug. Back when we were doing rifle selection for a couple of agencies that I worked for, we shot slugs through different barriers, shot law enforcement duty type, 223 ammo through different barriers or whatever. So between the two, I would probably pick the AR. However, if I didn't have anything to worry about, in my opinion, for close quarters, there's nothing with more lethality than a 12 gauge. Okay, so again, this kind of comes down to it depends. Anti-personnel slugs, law enforcement slugs, double-aught buck, inside 25 yards, there's nothing more lethal than a 12 gauge. It's an incredibly effective close quarter tool. Incredibly effective. The downside is generally it has limited capacity. If you want a good maneuverable one with a light, etc., it's only going to be so long, which means the magazine's only going to be so long. It's slow to reload, and you're often limited with how much ammunition you can carry. Again, though, most home defense scenarios are probably over relatively short periods of, relatively quickly or occur in relatively short periods of time. But that's some of the limitations of the shotgun. What I like about the AR is that you do have larger mag capacity. It's easier to fire. There's less felt recoil. I can also suppress it, which for any home defense gun of my own, suppressed, because I'm probably not going to wake up in the middle of the night when the bump in the night, kit up, throw my ear pro on. So generally my home defense firearms are suppressed. It's generally a handgun. So I can suppress it. And it's not going to necessarily make it hearing safe, but it's certainly going to take a big chunk of the bite out by being able to suppress it. Now, here's the downside to both of them. Both of them will need a sling in order to go hands-free, and they require two hands. So depending on your situation, if you have kids, if you have other things to take care of or whatever, both of your hands are dedicated to that long gun. So sometimes a suppressed handgun with a weapon-mounted light, which for any sort of self-defense, home defense firearm, you should have a weapon-mounted light on there anyway. Positive ID is a real thing. How many tragic cases do you hear about shooting a loved one because they heard the bump in the night? They had a lack of good positive ID. So good weapon-mounted light, bright weapon-mounted light is absolutely a must on whatever platform you choose. But sometimes it might be a handgun. Handgun I can use one-handed. So if I needed to hold a child, a loved one, you know, push kids back, you know, try to herd my children, I could do that with a handgun. A handgun's easier to have handy in a small safe, keep secure, etc. A long gun might not be as accessible. And that's the other thing to keep in mind is accessibility. Are you going to be able to access it when you need it? And are you going to be able to prevent access to those who shouldn't have it, i.e. children, a burglar, a thief, whatever it might be? How are you going to keep it out of the hands who you don't want to have it? And concealed is not the only option, because even though you can hide it, sometimes things still get found. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Maybe I'll do a more dedicated video this winter where we can kind of dive in and talk a little bit more about the pros and cons, maybe do some room clearing or whatever. I think that'd actually be a good idea. Steve, I'm going to add that to the list. That'll be a good, when it's cold, video topic to do inside, so good job. Number 5 is from Jesus. What weapon light do you recommend on a duty gun, and which one do you think is easier to operate? Right now, I'm assuming you're talking about a handgun, so I'm going to focus on that. But right now, in my opinion, there's really only two, and that is the Surefire X300 Ultra, the new 1000 lumen version, and then the Streamlight TLR, I believe it's the HL. I can't remember if it's called the HL1, but the TLR HL, they're high output, and I think theirs is like 800 or so lumens. They both operate similarly. The Surefire they both have a kind of a lever-looking buttons on the back. And on the Surefire, you just simply push on either, you know, your reaction thumb. If you're a right-handed shooter, you use your reaction thumb. If you're a left-handed shooter, you'd use the other one. But you push in for momentary, and then to turn the light on for a constant, you would just move the lever down on either side into the rocker. So I like that the Surefire, it operates the same whether you're right or left-handed. The Streamlight is a rocker, so in order to use it momentary, you push down on the rocker with your left thumb. But if you're right-handed, if you're left-handed and using your right thumb, you have to, you know, just temporarily push up, and then to lock it on, you'd have to push it all the way down or all the way up, depending again on which thumb you are using. Both have been tried and true. They're tested. If I had to give a nod to one, I would probably say the Surefire is just a little bit more durable, maybe a little bit more rugged. However, it's also more money, and believe it or not, I think that the Surefire has a little bit more of a broader beam, being a handgun light that Surefire designed it for, whereas the Streamlight has a little bit more of a focused beam. And again, that's just based on my using both at classes, law enforcement quals, or whatever. So either one will work fine. Bang for the buck, Streamlight, you can get them for under $150, whereas the Streamlight's going to be 200-ish, maybe, you know, right around there. But pros and cons, they both take 123 batteries. They're both very bright. They both have good throw, good fill or flood. They're both, in my opinion, like the two most popular lights probably in the majority of holsters in the United States. Last, but certainly not least, is number 6. Really enjoyed the video on shortening screws. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. It was kind of one of those weird topics I wanted to make a video about. Was wondering where you got the screw blocks you were talking about. I've looked everywhere and can't find them. You can find them online. Otherwise, I actually got mine at my local Ace hardware store, and it was actually there's a little, hardware section, and it's called gun screws, and that's where they keep all the weird sizes, like the 640, the 840, the 648s or whatever. And then there's a little block. I think they called it a screw gauge, and it has just basically a piece of metal with a hole drilled and tapped. I tell you what, Kurt, if you can't find one, shoot me an email, and I will pick one up and I will mail one to you. Okay, so Kurt is like a bonus winner. And you might still win the prize, I don't know. We're gonna do a random number generator right now. So before I pick our random number for the random number generating who gets the Lucky Shot prize, I do want to give the answer to last month's trivia question. Was, if you remember my first channel, and I think only one guy got it right. I think it was Lance. So Lance, I'll reach out to you and I'll have a special prize for you since you knew that. And that was Patrol Tactical. Was my very first YouTube channel. I've since pretty much scrubbed it. I only have, I think, one video on that channel, and that's basically pointing people to the new channels. A lot of you guys answered Learning Firearms, which was technically my second channel, but that was the channel right before I joined the Guns and Tactics group. So you're not completely wrong. That was a previous, but it was not the first. The first was actually Patrol Tactical. So maybe in the future I'll do some more trivia questions. We'll kind of have a scavenger hunt for those of you that have been viewing a while. I'll see if you can find certain videos with clues in it, because every now and again there's like Easter eggs that happen in some of these various videos. But I do appreciate the comments. A lot of you guys have been watching for a long time and have given me some amazingly kind words. It humbles me. I really, really, really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me, especially those of you that have been following kind of my journey, both personal journeys as well as professional journeys. So I really appreciate that. And then one last thing before I pick the prize winner, and a lot of you are just like, come on, get on with it. It was super awesome to meet a few viewers at TriggrCon and run into people. I'm still humbled. Like when somebody would come up and say, hey Dave, I'm kind of thinking, have we met before? And then they tell me they're a viewer. They recognize me from here. We don't have a ton of subscribers. I know we're not the biggest channel out there. So it really means a lot to me that you guys would take the time to say hello. And those of you that did, I gave you a patch to say thank you. So I appreciate that. So here we go. Random number generator between 1 and 6. It's question number 4, which was Steven, the AR shotgun or AR or shotgun for home defense. So Steven, I'm gonna be getting in touch with you to get a prize coming your way. Again, if you guys wanna see the episode continue to grow, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, if you wanna see your question get on the show, send us an email. Email address will be shown below. That is the QA@gunsandtactics.com. But again, if you're watching this and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Also hit that share button. Check out the webpage for more info. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have a great day.